So we've looked at ethics and morality. So in this one, let's just look at ethics and values and some of the other issues. So values in this case are basically what you call enduring beliefs and attitudes of any given society or institution. Now, it is basically what is attached as important by a given society. And there's a key difference here. On one hand, you have ethics, and on the other hand, you have values. Ethics, on one hand, are simple stipulations and guidelines of behavior. We are saying it is important that you do 1, 2, 3, and 4. On the other hand, values are basically what you have as beliefs and preferences of any given society. Now, it is more of a stimuli to certain behavior, and it defines what are the priorities and attitudes that are important for any given society. Now, ethics, on the other hand, is a system of moral principles that have been set over time. And as we said earlier, this is an objective and rational way of thinking, while on this side, it is subjective. Why is it subjective? Because values change from society to society. What is important for a certain system of thought is not important for another. Values of democracy and free speech are important in America, but the same values are not important in Saudi Arabia. Therefore, trying to inculcate one value system of one society into another will simply not work. Now, ethics on one hand is basically a boundary of behavior between what a person can be able to do and not do. In other words, there are boundaries of behavior. It is not delimiting, it is limiting. Values, on the other hand, are what is important to you and what you should strive towards. Now, this being the case, we can say that ethics is the systematic examination and justification of morals and values. So, with that being said, let us go to the next thing. And what are some of the fallacies involved in ethical reasoning? What are some of the fallacies involved in ethical reasoning? So the first fallacy that we'll be looking at is what we call the slippery slope fallacy. And this is a fallacy to ethical reasoning, and it says the reason why we shouldn't have certain social conversation is because of what could come out of them. In other words, we are opening a can of worms or Pandora's box, and we are about to unleash unbridled fury. But the question is, how do you know that? How do you know we should not have this conversation about abortion? How do you know we should not have this conversation about LGBTQ community? How do you know we should not have these conversations that we consider to be taboos in society, just because you think things will go wrong in society? Now, a good example would be when we say, let us not teach sex education to our primary schools because it will encourage sexual promiscuity. On this side, let us not legalize weed because our society will become degraded. Let us not allow anyone to own firearms because we'll have mass shootings in Kenya over here. All these are things that we hold to be true, but we do not have proof to that effect that indeed it is true. That's one fallacy. The other fallacy has to do with what you call popular opinion behaviorism. And in this case, what we're basically talking about is, simply put, if everyone is engaging in a certain behavior, then you should do it too. If everyone is doing or engaging in certain unethical behavior, then it is basically enough rationalization for a person to engage in it. But we say two wrongs don't make you right, and just because every person is doing it does not mean you should be doing it, because there's some people who may be misguided and they will be misguiding others and so forth and so forth, and that effect will be creating a chain reaction of a perceived truth of behavior which is actually based on a lie. And this, we said, a good example would be apartheid. It was a popular and established system of thought to the whites, but in reality it was not a rational way of doing things. In other words, it was just wrong and plain wrong. The other fallacy has to do with ethics and religious thought. And basically here what we're talking about is this. A lot of people are religious and they believe ethics. A lot of people are not religious and they believe ethics is a relative topic. That's the first thing. The same people who are not religious believe ethics applies to everyone. Then there are those who are highly religious and call people to unrealistic ethical standards which are not practical, as it were. So you have all these things that are happening in the name of God or in the name of religion. And there are very many ethical things that have happened in the name of religion. Now, a good example would be plainly put in this way. There are people who have followed cult leaders all the way to their death, even though they know this here is an ethically unacceptable decision. They have made that decision, but in the name of God. There are others who have been swindled of all their life savings in the name of God. Therefore, you have people who are not religious, but they do have an ethical frame of thought. Then you have others who are religious, but their ethical frame of thought is just compromised in a significant way. Therefore, the debate of ethics and religion is this. Is religion the only source of ethics? And reality is that no, it is not. Behavioralism can be a source of ethics in itself, and rules of conscience can be source of ethics in itself. Then you have the other fallacy, and this is ethical, or what you call moral legalism. And when you're committing this fallacy, this is what you're assuming. You're assuming that the law is the benchmark of behavior. That the law is the benchmark of behavior. This is what you call moral legalism. You're assuming that the law is a benchmark to judge the morality of an action. But the reality is that, as we had said earlier, the law can have seriously compromising issues. For example, it was legal at some point in the States to own slaves. It was legal to have separated caste between black and white. You have the caste system in India, and all these things were legal, but now that we look at them, they're just unethical and distasteful. So the law is not a basis for ethics. It is not a source of ethics, even though you can be able to say both of them are mutually inclusive. They need each other to work, But in reality, the law is not the source of ethics. It is a representation of the current state of consciousness of a certain population. Therefore, currently, we believe man and woman are equal in Kenya, but this is not the law in Saudi Arabia. Therefore, Saudi Arabia needs to transition through certain steps before they can agree that indeed men and women are equal. Again, under moral legalism, we had issues of some things are ethical and legal, true. For example, the Good Samaritan law, that's good. Some things are ethical but illegal. For example, during the freedom struggle, you had some laws that were stifling civil action, so it was called civil disobedience. Then you have others that are unethical, but they are legal. Then you have others that are unethical and they are illegal. These are just crimes and other issues of violence. Now, when we're thinking about these fallacies, there's one thing that you need to clear out, and this one is called what you call moral conventionalism. And basically it suggests that if anything is accepted by society, then it becomes a guideline for behavior. That is not, again, always correct. So it is a fallacy to assume that something that is accepted by society is morally acceptable. So that is it for the fallacies and value systems. Let us just go now to the other issues of theories, theories and dimensions of ethics. Thank you.